All right, in the previous video, I explained all about how I got the doors aligned, and then I went off on this tangent about metal cutting and everything like that. So I would highly advise you go back, if you haven't seen that video, and watch it, because I talk about how I align and mark the doors, because these are double doors. It does matter which ends are going to butt together and everything like that. I also talked a lot about different metal cutting tools. So this is my preferred shop tool for cutting metal, especially repeat cuts. It's not by hand and it's by machine, so it's more accurate than I could probably do it. But in any case, I've got my silver Sharpie here, which you should always have for doing any metal work or dark woodwork. If you have to write on an unseen place, it really stands out. So rather than a pencil or something like that. They also have soapstone you can use to mark that if you're going to be welding it. Yeah, I don't know, if this stuff burns up, you may not want to inhale it. All right, so what I've done is decided that I'm going to do 13-inch straps to be mounted on the door. So they're going to be 8 inches into the actual door, and then 5 inches is going to stick out beyond the door so that I can mount the pulley to it. And I'm going to put an updated video. I know I went through all the different barn doors, but I found some different, the barn door through a SketchUp that we did, but I found some different hardware in the meantime, and I want to go back over that video and kind of, not completely redo it, but just talk about the changes that we made to the hardware. So what I want to do is, I've decided that 8 inches, that's the compressor. It just, goes off like that. It should stop any second now. Okay, so I'm going to have 8 inches into the door. Sorry for wasting about 30 seconds of your time. So I've got 8 inches into the door and 5 inches out, so I'm going to be 13 inches overall. So I've got my 1/4 inch by 2 inch flat stock, my flat bar, and what I'm going to do is just mark 13 inches using my same techniques I talk about in the measure, mark, and cut skill building video that's also on our channel. I'm just going to go ahead and mark at the 13 inch. And again, if you're a little off, that's okay, but they all have to be a little off. That's the problem. And so, because if they're all a little bit off, they'll still align perfectly within their own tolerances. So what I'm going to do then is a couple things. I'm going to set this guy. I talk about this tool on in the last video. So I'm going to set him up and just line the blade up with the cut mark. And I think we're close. I'm going to start clamping down. Okay, so I need to bring it in a hair. Problem is it's heavy on the one end, and I should have put a table underneath it, but I didn't. All right, so it's lined up. Now, the importance of lining it up at the 13-inch mark right now is because this tool has an extension that will allow me to cut repetitive cuts without, it's like a stop block in the woodworking world. And all I do is snug up this little black arm here and this plastic arm, and then I just tighten it down. Now all I can do is I can make my 13-inch cut and then just slide the metal up, and keep going. And so I'm going to do that now while, and then fast forward, you don't have to watch me cut. I'm going to cut 4 pieces because I need 2 pieces to hang both doors, two pieces per door. All right, I'm back now, and I have my 4 pieces cut, and each of them are 13 inches. When I'm done punching the holes in these, I'm going to make sure to grind off. There's really sharp little pieces sticking up here, and you don't want, if for some reason somebody's cleaning up there or wiping down for dust or something, you don't want them to rub their hand across that and open up their hand. So be sure to take a grinder and grind the edges, just a little bit of, a little touch of a bevel on there, not very much, and just make sure any of the burrs are off and everything like that before we paint them. Now, I have a lot of holes to drill. So I have, these screws here are going to be 1/2 inch. So I've got 2 1/2-inch holes to put in each one of these. That's 2, 4, 6, 8 per door. I've got to put a 5/8 hole in each one of these for the hardware for the pulley. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12. And then I've got about 8 or so holes to punch through or drill through for the rail that's going to go up to the top so that we can mount the rail to the wall. That's about 20 holes. Now, if you do this a lot, you can use a drill press if you want. That will certainly get you through. You have to take your time and have the bits set. A lot of people don't know this, but I mean, they do know it if you own a drill press. But if you're thinking about getting a drill press, there's bands like the same kind of band that's in your car that helps turn the alternator when the engine turns over, and those bands have to be changed to alter the speed of the drill press for the different materials. Now, a lot of people just use the same speed all the time; they don't care, but it really, again, helps the situation to do the right thing here. So that's one way you could do it. You could get a bit like this. A drill bit. You could mark your holes on here, and go ahead and put a little oil down. I'm not a big fan of WD-40 for that application. It's flammable. It's whatever, but and it's an aerosol. It gets in your lungs and you breathe it in. If you just have a little 3-in-1 oil or something like that, you just squirt a little bit on there and then go ahead and drill your holes, and it keeps the bits cool, which keeps them sharper longer. But anyway, what I have here. Now, this is a larger one, but this is called a Whitney Punch. And if you're doing a lot of holes, it can save you a lot of time. Drilling out those holes, again, remember I talked in the last video, it's all about trade-offs, time and money. Something like this is going to run you, $300 to $400 depending on what size you get. I got the larger size because I just never know, and I do a lot of other metalworking aside from this, and so then you also have to buy the taps and dies that go with it. So, as an example, the way the Whitney Punch works, I'm not going to show you how to drill holes. I mean, you guys have all drilled holes before. You mark the center and you just drill straight through. Try to keep it straight up and down, completely vertical, and all that. But again, I'm just showing you an alternative if you may be even a metal worker trying to build wooden barn doors, and you may know all about this stuff but may not have run into a Whitney Punch. But anyway, it's a great tool. It goes through steel very quickly, and all it is a hand-activated punch. And the way it essentially works is I've got a die that receives this, is going to receive the bit, and what I'm going to do is, the tap rather, and what I'm going to do is just turn the Whitney Punch, and it's going to drive this almost piston looking thing straight through the hole in the middle of this die here that's going to allow you to punch the hole through steel. Now, Whitney punches are just rated for how thick a steel they'll go through and all this other kind of stuff. So I think this one can go through like 1/2 inch of steel with a 1/4 inch hole. That's a lot. I mean, if you're basically hand torquing a hole through a 1/2 inch thick plate of steel, I mean, it's something to behold, actually. This is 1/4 inch, and I'm going to be doing a 1/2 inch hole, so I need a 1/2 inch die and the 1/2 inch tap that's going to go with it. Now, I know it's very hard for you to see kind of what goes on here, but the die sits in a little cavity in the bottom, and the tap basically goes down into this collet. It's not unlike a router collet, like so, and then the collet is screwed up into this side of the punch. And so I'm going to do that really quickly now for the punch, and that's going to get this guy in there. It's a little tight, working like this. It's a little bit of finger work that you have to do to get this stuff going in here. So let's just get him up there. And then you take a little crescent wrench and you tighten it down pretty good. You don't want it coming loose.
And you don't need a lot of, you know, a huge amount of torque on these things or whatever. But still needs some hand tightening. Other way, actually. This is like a reverse thing. Okay. Okay. That's good and tight. And now I'm going to take this, and by turning it, it's basically on a almost like a dial, like a spiral dial, and it's basically what, you know, as you turn the dial, the punch in the center goes up and down. So I'm going to make sure that it's all the way up, and then I'm going to slide in the die that sits in a small cavity in the bottom. The thing about the Whitney punch is it's based on the physics principle of torque. And the physics principle about torque is the longer your torque arm, or the longer the arm on something, the greater the amount of force or torque that you can put against it to turn something. So in other words, if I had my hands on this little thing that sticks out here and I pull, there's only so much force I'm going to be able to torque to drive the bit around and down, right? So torque is about angular momentum, or angular force, rather. And if I add a pipe, now I've lengthened the lever arm, as it were, and that has a direct correlation to how much torque can be applied. And the longer the arm, the greater the torque. And literally, you could take a pipe, if you had one 10 feet long, you could walk out 10 feet, and you'd get a huge amount more torque than you would from like this little 2-inch pipe. Or, I mean, a 2-foot pipe. Now, it's a 3/4 inch pipe, so it's like not a huge deal. There is a, you can get a longer one. I might need a 4-foot pipe to get through this 1/2-inch hole here. So let's give it a try. And basically what you'll do is I would make the marks on the steel where the drill needs to go, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then, or where the hole needs to go. And then you can either drill it, like I said, like everybody's got a drill usually who's doing this kind of stuff, or a drill press. Drilling through 1/4-inch steel does take a while. So again, 20 holes, you know, is going to be a long time. So I prefer to use a punch. And this is just a sample piece that I'm going to put under here for you, just to show you how it works. Okay, what I've done is this table that I have is one of the wings sort of for the table saw is a little rickety to pull a 1/2-inch hole through a 1/4 inch of steel. So I've moved the table. I've actually moved this to a heavier table, which is here, and the legs on this table and the frame underneath is solid steel. So I'm not okay. It'll move a little, but if you were to try to put a 1/2-inch hole through 1/2-inch steel, man, you'd have to bolt this thing to concrete and steel to get it to go without, you know, tearing something apart. So let's just say that I'm going to make an X here very loosely, you know, from this position here. So let's just say I'm approximating halfway through. So now you can see where it is that I want to draw, you know, place the punch right on the center of the X marks the spot. So I usually do this part without the handle, just because it's easier to line up. And now I don't have my reading glasses on, so I'm really guessing when I get in close there. Okay, so it's approximate, and it's good enough for this demonstration. Now, but all you do is you line up the punch with the tap with the cross mark that you want, and you just give it a good old-fashioned hard, whoop, don't trip over anything, punch. Okay, and then watch my doors here. You can see what drops out the bottom is this beautiful little 1/2-inch pellet, and then you just rotate it back and up, out of harm's way. And there you have it. A nice 1/2-inch hole that's perfectly symmetrical, and it's perfectly flat, and there's no burring around the edges. See how I'm rubbing my fingers? I did another one earlier to make sure I had the right torque arm on it. But as you can see, that's how I'm going to do all of the holes. Okay, so on the first set of holes, I'm not going to go through the punch again and all that. Again, you could drill it through, but again, a 1/2-inch drill bit, you know, it takes a while. But that's fine. If that's all you've got, if that's the beginning tool set, then use that tool set that you've got. It just might take you a little bit longer. So I'm going to go ahead and start marking these. Now what I've decided to do, this is actually just a piece of scrap, but what I've decided to do, since I have roughly 8 inches on the board and 5 inches off, I'm just going to make the screw bolts a couple inches from about 1.5 inches or so, or maybe a little bit more from each end. That'll give it a nice symmetrical, solid appearance. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those up, and I'll cut my 1/2 inch holes, and then we'll talk about the pulleys next.